Close your eyes for a moment. Take a deep, slow breath. Picture the vast, endless night sky stretching out above you. Among the distant, twinkling lights, there is one that has always stood out as the ultimate symbol of cosmic beauty: Saturn, the jewel of our solar system. We have all seen the photographs, a perfect golden sphere surrounded by delicate icy rings. It looks peaceful from here. It looks quiet, almost asleep in the dark. But this beauty is a grand illusion, a breathtakingly gorgeous mask hiding a chaotic beast. Today, we are going to look much closer. We are going to leave the safety of Earth, drift through the freezing void of space, and approach this massive giant. And as we do, you will realize a chilling truth. Saturn is, without a doubt, the most terrifying planet in our solar neighborhood. It is terrifying, yes, but also deeply, hypnotically mesmerizing. Allow my voice to guide you. Let go of your earthly worries and anxieties. As we descend into the dark, roaring depths of this gas giant, you will find a strange, comforting peace in its immense, unstoppable power. The universe is terrifying, but it is also a cradle of awe. Take another deep breath. We are leaving Earth behind. Since the very dawn of humanity, we have looked up at this slow, wandering star. Ancient astronomers tracked its deliberate, heavy path across the constellations, naming it after the Roman god of time and agriculture, a deity of cycles, aging, and immense weight. When Galileo Galilei first turned his primitive telescope toward it in the 17th century, he was profoundly confused. He thought the planet had strange ears or handles attached to its sides. It took decades before Christian Huygens finally realized that these shapes were actually flat, detached rings encircling the planet. For centuries, Saturn remained a silent mystery, a beautiful static painting on the canvas of the night. But our perception shattered when the Pioneer and Voyager spacecraft flew by in the late 20th century, followed later by the glorious Cassini mission. These robotic explorers stripped away the mystery. They looked past the golden hue. They showed us that Saturn is a true gas giant, a massive, swirling ball composed mostly of hydrogen and helium. A world with no solid surface to stand on, a world where the weather is a weapon and the atmosphere is a crushing, endless abyss. It is a place of absolute extremes, where the laws of physics create landscapes of pure, unadulterated terror. Yet, understanding this terror is the key to understanding the majestic forces that shape our universe. But what is truly waiting for us as we approach this giant? Let us begin our descent by looking at the very thing that makes Saturn so famous: the beautiful rings. From Earth, they look like a solid, glowing track, perhaps a smooth racetrack made of starlight and glass. But this is a grand cosmic illusion, a persistent myth we must shatter right now. Imagine drifting closer, the absolute silence of space pressing against your spacesuit. As you approach, that smooth, solid halo breaks apart into a chaotic, terrifying blizzard of destruction. You are not looking at a solid disk. You are looking at billions upon billions of jagged pieces of dirty ice and rock. Some are the size of a tiny grain of sand, harmless and glittering in the distant sunlight. But others are the size of massive, towering mountains, tumbling and crashing into one another at speeds that would shatter an earthly city in mere seconds. Imagine floating right at the edge of the A-ring. You would see a churning, violent river of ice boulders grinding together in a perpetual, silent dance of destruction. The rings are a chaotic battlefield, the frozen remains of shattered moons, dead comets, and ancient asteroids caught in Saturn's deadly gravitational grip. It is a beautiful, spinning nightmare. If you were to fly a fragile ship through the dense parts of these rings, it would be shredded into fine dust. The sheer terror of this colossal, spinning meat grinder of ice is hard to comprehend. Yet watching it from a safe, distant orbit, it is strangely hypnotic. The violence becomes a rhythm, the chaos becomes a pattern. You just have to remember never to get too close. Now, imagine we have safely passed through the razor-thin plane of the rings. We are looking down at the golden clouds of Saturn itself. If you are looking for a place to land, you will be deeply disappointed and perhaps deeply terrified. This brings us to the most unsettling fact about Saturn. There is no ground. There is no solid surface to stand on, no crust to build upon, no soil to touch. If you were to jump from your spaceship and fall into Saturn, you would not eventually hit the ground with a thud. You would just fall, and fall, and fall forever. Imagine the pure psychological terror of a bottomless pit, expanded to the size of a planet. You would sink through endless layers of swirling gas, descending deeper and deeper into a dark, roaring abyss. The concept of down loses its meaning. You are simply being swallowed whole by a cosmic ocean of gas. To illustrate this, picture dropping a heavy iron weight into an ocean that has no seabed. It just keeps sinking, the water getting darker and heavier until the weight is crushed into nothingness. That is what awaits anything that enters Saturn. The illusion of the golden sphere hides a bottomless void. Yet, in this endless falling, there is a strange release. A release from the boundaries of solid Earth. You are entirely surrendered to the gravity of the giant. It is terrifying, but it demands absolute submission, bringing a weird sense of peace to those who can accept the void. As we drift toward the northern pole of this bottomless world, we encounter something that defies human logic, something that looks like it was drawn by a giant cosmic architect rather than the chaotic forces of nature. The hexagon. Spanning wider than 2 entire Earths put together, there is a permanent, massive storm raging at Saturn's North Pole. But it is not circular like our hurricanes. It is a perfect, 6-sided hexagon. The sharp, unnatural geometry of this storm is deeply unnerving. Nature is supposed to be curved, chaotic, and fractal. Finding a massive, precise geometric shape spinning in the clouds of a gas giant triggers a primal sense of dread. It feels artificial. It feels wrong. Imagine looking down from orbit and seeing a hurricane shaped like a colossal stop sign, churning with thick, dark clouds. Scientists tell us it is the result of differing speeds of atmospheric winds, creating standing waves that lock into this 6-sided pattern. But standing over it, knowing it is large enough to swallow our entire planet whole, the scientific explanation barely softens the awe and the fear. This geometric eye stares out into the cold darkness of space, a perpetual vortex of storms within storms. Watching the edges of the hexagon spin, changing colors from blue in the winter to a sickly gold in the summer, is mesmerizing. It is a hypnotic mandala created by the brutal laws of fluid dynamics, trapping your gaze in its terrifying symmetry. Let us plunge into those clouds. The golden haze that looks so soft and serene from millions of miles away is actually a turbulent war zone. The winds on Saturn do not just blow, they scream. They tear at the fabric of the atmosphere. Saturn boasts some of the fastest winds in the entire solar system. At the equator, these winds reach a mind-bending supersonic speed of 1,100 miles per hour. That is roughly 1,800 kilometers per hour. To put that into perspective, the most devastating Category 5 hurricanes on Earth barely reach 200 miles per hour. Saturn's winds would instantly shred any human-made structure to atomic dust. Imagine standing in a wind tunnel, but the wind is moving faster than a fighter jet, faster than the speed of sound. You would not just be blown away, you would be instantly disintegrated. The atmosphere is banded in bright yellow and pale gold, but these stripes are actually jet streams racing past each other in opposite directions at lethal speeds. The friction between these atmospheric bands creates chaotic, swirling eddies that would swallow continents. As we float safely in our imaginary indestructible vessel, watching these bands race by, we can appreciate the terrifying energy of the planet. It is a world of perpetual motion, a world that never rests, never sleeps. The hypnotic flow of the gas is a beautiful dance of pure destruction, a reminder of how gentle and fragile our own Earth's atmosphere truly is. As we continue our relentless descent into the belly of the beast, the terror changes form. It is no longer just about the speed of the winds, it is about the sheer, suffocating weight of the planet. Saturn is mostly gas, which might make you think it is light and airy. This is a dangerous myth. As you sink deeper, the hydrogen and helium gas begins to compress under the unimaginable weight of the atmosphere above it. The pressure builds, slowly at first, then exponentially. It becomes a physical, crushing presence. Imagine diving deep into Earth's ocean, feeling the weight of the water pressing against your eardrums. Now, multiply that feeling by 1,000,000. Deep within Saturn, the pressure is so intense that it would crumple the strongest titanium submarine like a piece of thin tin foil. The gas becomes so thick, so dense, that it stops acting like a gas altogether. It behaves like a thick, boiling liquid. You are no longer falling through the air, you are sinking through an invisible, crushing fluid. The claustrophobia would be absolute. Millions of miles of heavy gas pressing down on you from every possible direction. There is no escape upwards, and only a darker, heavier fate downwards. Yet if we detach from our fear, there is a profound stillness to this crushing pressure, a dark embrace. It is a place where nothing can survive, and therefore a place where nothing is expected of you. The ultimate, heavy silence of the deep atmosphere, wrapping around you like a dense, weighted blanket. With this crushing pressure comes an impenetrable, all-consuming darkness. From the outside, Saturn reflects the golden light of our distant sun. But down here, deep in the atmosphere, the sun is a forgotten memory. The thick layers of ammonia, water, and hydrogen clouds block out every single photon of light. If you were sinking through this zone, you would be enveloped in a pitch-black void more profound than the deepest trench in our oceans. You cannot see your hands. You cannot see the swirling storms. You can only feel the heavy, dragging motion of the dense gas around you. The human mind is terrified of the dark because of what might be hiding in it. But here, the dark itself is the monster. It is an isolation so total, so absolute, that it strips away your sense of self. Picture being trapped in a sensory deprivation tank, but one that is thousands of miles wide and slowly crushing you. The sheer scale of this darkness is paralyzing. And yet, many people use the concept of absolute darkness to find sleep, to find peace away from the noisy, bright world. Saturn offers the ultimate dark room, a place where the universe turns the lights out entirely. If you can push past the primal terror of the unseen, the darkness of Saturn is a canvas of pure emptiness, allowing the mind to finally rest from visual stimulation. But this darkness is not entirely silent. If we could translate the electromagnetic emissions of Saturn into audio, we would hear the true voice of the planet, and it is the sound of a nightmare. NASA's Cassini spacecraft recorded these radio waves created by the interaction of the planet's intense magnetic field with the solar wind. When sped up and converted to sound waves we can hear, the result is deeply chilling. It sounds like a chorus of ghostly wails, sweeping sirens, and mechanical rhythmic shrieks echoing across the void. It does not sound natural. It sounds like the soundtrack to a cosmic horror film. Imagine floating in that pitch-black, crushing darkness, and suddenly your radio picks up these sweeping, descending tones that sound like monstrous entities howling in the deep. It is the eerie, lonely music of a giant spinning in the cold. It reminds us that space is not just an empty vacuum. It is alive with invisible, vibrating energies. Listening to the sounds of Saturn is a proven way to trigger existential dread. Yet, for those who seek the bizarre, these sweeping, alien frequencies can become a form of dark ambient noise, like white noise, but from another dimension. The wailing of Saturn can block out the trivial noises of our earthly lives, replacing our small worries with the vast, ancient song of a magnetic giant. Let us rise back up, closer to the cloud tops, where the darkness gives way to violent atmospheric light. We must address another myth. Because Saturn's colors are muted compared to the vibrant red and orange of Jupiter, many people assume Saturn's weather is calm. This is incredibly wrong. Saturn hides its fury well. Roughly every 30 Earth years, corresponding to one Saturnian year, a monstrous event occurs, the Great White Spot. This is a megastorm that erupts from deep within the planet, punching through the upper clouds and spreading out with terrifying speed. It is a thunderstorm so colossal it wraps around the entire circumference of the planet. Imagine looking up at the sky on Earth and seeing a single glowing white thunderhead that covers the entire horizon, stretching across continents, boiling with unimaginable violence. The Great White Spot is a temporary scar of brilliant white against the golden bands, a reminder of the massive thermal energy trapped beneath the surface. It is terrifying because of its suddenness and its scale. A storm large enough to swallow several Earths, churning with updrafts that move at hundreds of miles per hour. It shows us that beneath the seemingly smooth exterior, Saturn is a boiling cauldron waiting to explode. Watching this storm evolve from space is like watching a slow-motion explosion that lasts for months, a hypnotic display of atmospheric rage. Within these massive storms, and even in the daily weather of Saturn, lurks another terror: the lightning. Saturn does not just have storms, it has electric tempests that defy comprehension. The lightning strikes deep within Saturn's clouds are up to 10,000 times more powerful than the strongest lightning we experience on Earth. 10,000 times. Let that number sink in. A single flash of Saturnian lightning burns so bright and hot, it instantly vaporizes anything in its path, lighting up an area the size of a whole country. Imagine being enveloped in the deep, crushing darkness we spoke of earlier. Suddenly, the entire abyss is illuminated by a blinding, jagged flash of electric blue and white, revealing the chaotic, boiling mountain ranges of gas around you for just a fraction of a second before plunging you back into the void. The sheer voltage is terrifying. It is raw, untamed energy arcing through the heavy atmosphere. The thunder that follows such a strike would be a physical shock wave, a deafening boom that ripples through the dense gas like a tsunami. Yet, seen from a safe orbit on the dark side of the planet, these lightning storms are a mesmerizing light show. Tiny, brilliant flashes of cosmic fireflies dancing in the deep belly of a giant. It is a reminder of the raw, electric pulse of the universe. As we dive even deeper, past the lightning, past the ammonia clouds, the very nature of matter begins to betray us. We reach a zone where the temperature and pressure do something completely alien. Here, it is raining. But it is not raining water. It is raining neon and helium. Because the environment is so extreme, helium gas condenses into liquid droplets. These droplets are heavier than the surrounding hydrogen, so they fall. Imagine a relentless, heavy downpour of liquid helium, falling like glowing metallic tears through a thick, fog-like atmosphere of compressed hydrogen. This helium rain strips the upper layers of their neon, carrying it deep into the interior. It is a bizarre, terrifying weather system. If you were exposed to it, the liquid helium, sitting at temperatures near absolute zero, would instantly freeze-shatter you, while the crushing pressure simultaneously pulverized you. It is an environment so utterly hostile that our biological minds struggle to picture it. A dark, foggy realm where the rain is made of the very elements that fill balloons on Earth, now liquefied by monstrous pressure. But picture the quiet visual of this alien rain. Billions of tiny, cold drops falling slowly through a dense, unseen medium. A silent, eternal shower in the dark. It is a strange, alien poetry written in the language of extreme physics. Below the zone of helium rain, we enter what is perhaps the most terrifying layer of Saturn. The pressure has become so absolute, so unbelievably heavy, that hydrogen gas, the lightest element in the universe, is forced to do the impossible. It becomes a metal. We have entered the ocean of liquid metallic hydrogen. This is not a concept we experience on Earth. The hydrogen is squeezed so tightly that its electrons break free, allowing the fluid to conduct electricity, just like copper or iron. Imagine sinking into a vast, planet-wide ocean of boiling, swirling, liquid metal. It is incredibly hot, thousands of degrees, yet it flows like water under the crushing weight of the atmosphere above. This is the dynamo that generates Saturn's massive magnetic field. If you were somehow teleported into this ocean, you would be instantly incinerated and crushed simultaneously. It is an environment of pure, violent energy. The terror of this place is the sheer impossibility of it. A metal made of gas, a liquid ocean without a drop of water. It makes us realize how strange the universe is, how fragile our earthly definitions of solid, liquid, and gas truly are. Floating above this theoretical ocean in our minds, we can only marvel at the sheer power required to force gas to become metal. It is the ultimate expression of cosmic pressure. And what lies at the very center, at the heart of this terrifying giant? The core of Saturn is a mystery wrapped in a nightmare. For a long time, the myth was that gas giants had simple, solid, rocky cores, like a large Earth hidden in the center. But recent data suggests something much more complex and unsettling. The core is likely not a solid ball at all. It is a diffuse, glowing, violently hot mixture of rock, ice, and fluid metallic hydrogen, all blended together into a dense, muddy soup. The temperature here is estimated to be over 21,000 degrees Fahrenheit, or nearly 12,000 degrees Celsius. That is hotter than the surface of our sun. The pressure is tens of millions of times greater than at Earth's sea level. It is a chaotic, burning heart that is slowly dissolving into the surrounding metallic ocean. There is no firm ground even at the very center. Just a dense, glowing sludge of superheated material under agonizing pressure. The terror of Saturn's core is the terror of the absolute extreme. It is a place where matter itself is tortured into a state we cannot replicate. Yet, knowing this inferno exists, buried deep under millions of miles of cold gas and violent storms, gives the planet a sense of ancient, untamed life. It is a burning furnace, keeping the giant alive in the freezing dark of the outer solar system. Let us retreat from the crushing depths and return to the silence of space, safely outside the planet. We must discuss an invisible force that makes Saturn so deadly: its gravity. Saturn's gravity is a giant invisible web stretching out into the dark. It is the force that trapped the rings, the force that holds dozens of moons hostage, and the force that would pull you down into the abyss without a second thought. While gravity is everywhere, the sheer scale of Saturn's pull is terrifying. It dictates the architecture of its corner of the solar system. Comets that wander too close are torn apart by tidal forces, their remains added to the rings. It is a silent, unrelenting predator. Imagine falling out of a spaceship. You wouldn't drop instantly. You would be caught in a slow, inevitable spiral, pulled by an invisible string toward the golden clouds. There is a deep psychological terror in inevitability. Knowing that, once caught, there is absolutely no escape. You are claimed by the giant. But this same invisible web is what keeps the beautiful rings in order. It orchestrates the complex orbital dance of the moons. Gravity is the ultimate sculptor of the cosmos. By giving in to the thought of this massive gravitational embrace, we can feel a strange sense of grounding. We are small, weightless things in the face of such immense, controlling power. Now that we are back in space, let us look at the rings again, but from a different, terrifying perspective: their thickness, or rather, their lack of it. We know they are wide enough to span the distance between the Earth and our moon. They are immense. But here is the terrifying paradox: they are incredibly, impossibly thin. On average, the main rings of Saturn are only about 10 meters thick. That is roughly 30 feet. Think about that. A structure wide enough to fit multiple planets, yet thinner than a typical earthly house. In terms of proportions, they are thousands of times thinner than a razor blade. If you were to look at the rings perfectly edge-on, they would practically disappear. The terror here lies in the extreme fragility of this cosmic structure. Imagine a razor blade made of spinning, crashing ice chunks, slicing through the vacuum of space. It feels wrong for something so massive to be so thin. It is a delicate balance of physics hanging by a thread. A slight gravitational disturbance from a passing moon causes ripples and waves to shoot across the ring plane, like a cosmic ocean surface trembling. The extreme thinness makes the ring seem like an illusion, a fragile halo that could shatter at any moment. It is a reminder of how delicate the grandest structures in the universe can be, a thin sheet of glass spinning in the dark. Because the rings are so wide and so dense in places, they do something terrible to the planet itself. They cast shadows. And these are not just normal shadows. Because Saturn is tilted on its axis for long periods during its 29-year orbit around the Sun, the rings cast a massive, thick band of shadow over the planet's northern or southern hemisphere. Imagine living in a world where a giant, dark archway permanently blocks out the sun, plunging half the sky into deep, freezing twilight for years on end. These shadows drastically drop the temperatures in the upper atmosphere, creating an artificial, localized winter. The terror of the ring shadow is the terror of a solar eclipse that refuses to end. The majestic rings become a dark, oppressive band, stealing light and warmth. If you were floating in the upper atmosphere, drifting from the golden sunlight into the sharp edge of the ring shadow, you would feel an immediate, biting drop in temperature. It is a stark reminder that beauty often comes with a chilling cost. The rings give Saturn its iconic look, but they also condemn parts of it to years of freezing darkness. Yet, observing these sharp, perfect shadows creeping across the curved, hazy clouds of the giant is an incredibly peaceful, slow-moving visual. It is the steady, ticking clock of Saturn's long years. Hidden within this razor-thin disk of icy destruction are entities that add to the terror of the rings. The shepherd moons, tiny potato-shaped rocks with names like Prometheus and Pandora. These are not beautiful spherical worlds. They are scarred, violent little rocks that orbit right inside or on the edges of the rings. Their gravitational pull is what keeps the rings from spreading out into space. They herd the ice particles, hence the name shepherds, but they do so violently. As Prometheus orbits, its gravity dips into the delicate F-ring, dragging streamers of ice out of place, creating twisted, braided knots and dark, empty channels. It is like a shark swimming through a school of fish, tearing through the orderly structure. Watching time-lapse images of these moons, slicing through the ice, leaving a wake of gravitational chaos, is unsettling. It shows that the rings are not a peaceful place, but an active, turbulent environment constantly being sculpted by invisible forces. The sheer violent influence of a tiny rock over billions of ice particles is a testament to the chaotic nature of orbital mechanics. It destroys the illusion of serenity. The shepherds are relentless, trapped in a cold, eternal duty of maintaining boundaries through disruption. They are the restless ghosts haunting the icy graveyard of the rings. But the rings are not the only place where ice and terror meet. Let us look at one of Saturn's most famous moons, Enceladus. From a distance, it looks like a peaceful, perfectly white snowball, reflecting the faint sunlight. It is one of the brightest objects in the solar system because it is covered in clean, fresh ice. But this piece is a lie. Enceladus is hiding a violent, terrifying secret beneath its crust, a global ocean of liquid water. And this ocean wants out. The gravitational tug-of-war between Saturn and other moons squeezes and flexes Enceladus, heating its core. This extreme pressure forces the subterranean ocean to erupt through massive cracks in the ice at the South Pole. These are not just earthly geysers. These are colossal, violent jets of freezing water and ice particles blasting straight up into the vacuum of space at hundreds of miles per hour. Imagine standing on the dark, freezing surface of this moon, looking out at the black sky, and suddenly the ground splits open, shooting a blinding, roaring pillar of ice into the heavens. It is a violent expulsion of planetary guts. The terror of Enceladus is its deceptive calm. The ground beneath your feet could violently explode into space at any moment. These geysers are so massive that the ice they shoot out actually creates Saturn's entire E-ring. It is a moon that is constantly bleeding its ocean into the void. Now, let us turn our gaze to the largest moon of Saturn, Titan. This world is a completely different kind of terrifying. It is the only moon in our solar system with a thick, dense atmosphere. In fact, its atmosphere is thicker than Earth's, but you cannot breathe it. It is a suffocating shroud of nitrogen and methane smog. From space, Titan is just a featureless, creepy orange orb. The myth was that moons are just dead, cratered rocks. Titan shattered that myth by offering a toxic reflection of early Earth. If you descended through the thick yellow-orange smog, the light would dim to a sickly twilight, and when you finally saw the surface, the terror would truly set in. Titan has rivers, lakes, and oceans, but it is so incredibly cold, sitting at -290 degrees Fahrenheit, that water is frozen as hard as granite. The liquid flowing in those rivers and lakes is liquid methane and ethane. Imagine standing on a beach made of water ice pebbles, staring out at a perfectly still, oily black lake of liquid natural gas. The sky above is a heavy, toxic orange. It is an environment so alien, yet so eerily similar to Earth, that it causes severe cognitive dissonance. It is a haunted house version of our own planet, The quiet terror of Titan lies in its toxic familiarity. A world waiting in a deep freeze, wrapped in an eternal, poisonous smog. Let us look back at the giant itself and consider the sheer speed of its existence. We mentioned the winds, but the entire planet is moving at a terrifying pace. Despite being over 9 times wider than Earth, Saturn completes a full rotation on its axis in just over 10 hours. A day on Saturn is shorter than a single night's sleep for some people. This rapid spinning is horrifying when you consider the sheer mass involved. The centrifugal force generated by this furious spinning is so great that it actually deforms the planet. Saturn is not a perfect sphere. It is noticeably flattened at the poles and bulging heavily at the equator. Imagine a water balloon spinning so fast it threatens to tear itself apart. That is Saturn. The planet is literally throwing its own mass outward into space. If you were standing at the equator, if there were ground to stand on, you would weigh slightly less because the centrifugal force is trying to fling you into orbit. The visual of a giant, gaseous sphere struggling against its own immense rotation, stretched and bulging, is a testament to the brutal, unyielding physics of the universe. It is a world that cannot sit still, trapped in a relentless, dizzying spin. Focusing on this eternal, heavy spinning can act as a strange, hypnotic anchor, a reminder of the constant motion of the cosmos. Surrounding this rapidly spinning, bulging giant is an invisible shield that is as deadly as it is vast, Saturn's magnetosphere. Because of that churning ocean of liquid metallic hydrogen deep inside, Saturn generates a magnetic field second only to Jupiter's in strength. This field extends millions of miles into space, creating a massive bubble that deflects the solar wind. But it also traps highly energized particles, creating deadly radiation belts. If you were to fly a spacecraft unshielded through certain regions near Saturn, the radiation would fry the electronics and destroy your DNA within minutes. It is an invisible, silent killer waiting in the dark. The only visual proof we have of this terrifying energy field are the auroras at Saturn's poles. Just like on Earth, when charged particles hit the upper atmosphere, they create glowing curtains of light. But Saturn's auroras are massive, towering rings of ghostly ultraviolet light dancing around the poles. Imagine looking down and seeing a pale, glowing crown of radiation crackling silently in the extreme ultraviolet spectrum. It is a beautiful warning sign. The auroras are the visible edge of a lethal, invisible force field. They remind us that space is filled with energies we cannot see, forces that can eradicate life without a sound. Yet, these ghostly, shimmering rings of light offer a haunting, mesmerizing beauty that softens the reality of the danger they represent. Let us talk about the smell. While human survival is impossible, if you could somehow stick your head out of a spaceship window as you descended into Saturn's upper clouds, what would you experience? The terror would invade your senses. The beautiful golden hue we see from Earth is largely composed of ammonia crystals. The upper atmosphere would smell like the most pungent, suffocating industrial cleaner imaginable. As you sink deeper, past the ammonia clouds, you would hit clouds made of ammonium hydrosulfide. Here, the stench would morph into something far worse. The foul, nauseating reek of rotten eggs and sulfur. It is a truly toxic brew. Imagine drowning in a sea of thick gas that smells like a chemical spill mixed with rotting matter. The chemical composition of Saturn is completely hostile to biology. It is a poisonous, corrosive environment that would dissolve human lungs instantly. We often romanticize the planets, giving them personalities, but their chemical realities are stark and brutal. Saturn is not a welcoming golden deity. It is a giant sphere of toxic gas and noxious fumes. Knowing this strips away the romance and replaces it with a cold, terrifying respect for chemistry. But in the safety of our imagination, we can observe this toxic cloudscape without taking a breath, letting the swirling, poisonous gases become just another fascinating, harmless painting in the dark. One of the most profound terrors of Saturn is not physical but spatial, the sheer scale of its isolation. When we see pictures of Saturn in textbooks, it looks like it is just next door to Jupiter. But the reality of space is vastly, terrifyingly empty. Saturn is located nearly 1 billion miles away from the Sun. 1 billion miles. To put that into perspective, it takes sunlight, the fastest thing in the universe, about 80 minutes just to reach Saturn. If the Sun were to suddenly disappear, Saturn wouldn't know about it for over an hour. When you are at Saturn, Earth is nothing but a microscopic, pale blue pixel lost in the glare of the distant Sun. You are utterly, profoundly alone. The coldness of this distance is terrifying. At 1 billion miles from our star, the concept of warmth is practically non-existent. It is a lonely, freezing outpost in the deep ocean of the outer solar system. Imagine looking out of a window and realizing that everything you have ever known, every human being, every mountain, every ocean, is contained on a tiny speck of dust 1 billion miles away. The psychological weight of that isolation can be crushing. It induces a feeling of cosmic insignificance. But this insignificance can also be deeply liberating. At 1 billion miles away, your daily stress, your earthly problems, they simply cease to matter. You are just a fleeting thought in the vast, freezing silence of Saturn's orbit. To truly understand the hostility of this environment, we must look at the tragic, fiery end of our greatest emissary, the Cassini spacecraft. For 13 years, Cassini orbited Saturn, sending back the most breathtaking images humanity has ever seen. It survived the radiation, it dodged the rings, it mapped the moons, but in 2017, it ran out of fuel. NASA knew that if they left it in orbit, it might eventually crash into Enceladus or Titan, potentially contaminating those pristine worlds with earthly microbes. So, they made a terrifying choice. They ordered Cassini to commit suicide. They steered the probe directly into the atmosphere of Saturn. Imagine being a machine, a faithful servant, ordered to dive into the belly of the beast you have studied for a decade. As Cassini hit the upper atmosphere at roughly 76,000 miles per hour, the friction of the thin gases immediately turned into a searing, localized inferno. Cassini fought to keep its antenna pointed at Earth, screaming data back to us until the very last second. But the terror of Saturn's atmosphere was absolute. Within minutes, the spacecraft was torn apart by the aerodynamic forces, melted by the heat, and vaporized into atomic dust. It became a part of the planet. The death of Cassini is a stark, terrifying reminder that Saturn does not tolerate visitors. It consumes them. It is a graveyard for our metal explorers, a fiery wall that says, "You may look, but you may not touch." Another deeply unsettling aspect of Saturn is its ability to mess with our perception. The optical illusions created by its atmosphere are staggering. Because the planet is so massive and spinning so fast, the cloud bands get stretched and smoothed out. From a distance, Saturn looks almost like it is made of smooth, brushed metal, or perhaps a perfectly blended latte. The lines are soft, the colors transition gently. This is a terrifying lie of scale. Those soft transitions are actually storm fronts, thousands of miles wide, where brutal, supersonic winds are shredding each other. Our human brains cannot process the size. We look at a picture, and our mind shrinks the planet down to the size of a marble. If you were actually floating close to those cloud tops, the smooth bands would reveal themselves as chaotic, churning, three-dimensional mountain ranges of gas, boiling and rolling with terrifying violence. The illusion of smoothness is just a symptom of distance and our own inadequate perception. Saturn tricks the eye. It looks serene because it is too big for us to see the violence from afar. Realizing that your own eyes are lying to you, that beauty is merely an artifact of extreme distance, is a chilling thought. It makes you question what else in the universe is wearing a mask of calm over a face of pure chaos. We must also face the terrifying concept of cosmic mortality. We think of the solar system as a permanent fixture, an eternal clockwork. But Saturn holds a dark secret about its most famous feature. The rings are dying. They are not a permanent part of the planet. Scientists believe the rings might only be a few 100 million years old. They may have formed when dinosaurs walked the Earth, and they are disappearing at a terrifying rate. The rings are constantly being pulled in by Saturn's gravity and magnetic field, falling into the atmosphere as a relentless ring rain. Every half hour, an Olympic-sized swimming pool's worth of water ice is sucked from the rings and destroyed in the upper atmosphere. In perhaps 100 million years, a blink of an eye in cosmic time, the rings will be gone completely. Saturn will become a bare, ringless giant, much like Jupiter. The terror here is the realization that even the most massive, beautiful structures in the cosmos are temporary. We are living in a fleeting, privileged window of time where we get to see the rings. Watching this slow, invisible bleed of ice falling into the dark maw of the planet is a melancholic experience. It reminds us of the inescapable decay of the universe. Everything ends. Even the breathtaking halo of Saturn is just a temporary phase in the slow march of cosmic entropy. If the hexagonal storm at the North Pole wasn't terrifying enough, let us travel to the South Pole. Here, we do not find a geometric shape. We find an eye, a literal, staring eye looking out into the void. At the South Pole of Saturn lies a hurricane of monstrous proportions. But unlike the storms in the north, this one has a clearly defined, clear central eye, much like a hurricane on Earth. But this eye is 5,000 miles across. You could drop the entire continent of North America into it, and it would disappear. Staring straight down into this eye is one of the most terrifying visuals in the solar system. You are looking through a clearing in the thick, swirling clouds, straight down into the deeper, darker depths of the abyss. The walls of the eye are massive, towering clouds extending miles high, casting deep, jagged shadows. It looks like the entrance to the underworld. It is a demonic pupil surrounded by a violently swirling iris of gold and brown. Knowing that the winds in that eye wall are tearing around at hundreds of miles per hour makes the stillness of the center even more menacing. It is the calm heart of a monster. Floating above it, gazing into that vast, dark hole, you feel a primitive urge to pull back, a fear that the eye might just blink, or worse, that something might come out of it. Let us pause and feel the cold. We have talked about the heat deep inside the core, but the outer face that Saturn shows to the universe is unimaginably, terrifyingly cold. At the top of the clouds, the temperature hovers around -288 degrees Fahrenheit, or -178 degrees Celsius. At this temperature, the concept of cold changes. It is no longer just a physical sensation, it is an absolute halt to molecular motion. At these temperatures, water is not ice. It is a mineral, as hard and brittle as quartz. If you were exposed to this cold for a fraction of a second, the water in your cells would instantly crystallize, turning your body into glass. It is a cold that burns, a cold that shatters. The terror of this absolute freeze is how silent and motionless it is. While the winds rage, the very air itself is lethally, chemically frozen. Imagine drifting through those upper clouds, surrounded by tiny, suspended crystals of frozen ammonia, glittering in the faint, distant light of the sun. It is a beautiful, sparkling snow globe, but one that is locked in an eternal, deadly, deep freeze. This profound coldness offers a strange counterpoint to the violence of the storms. It is a heavy, static blanket over the chaos, a reminder of the freezing graveyard that is deep space. There is one more paradox that makes Saturn so unnerving. We have talked about its massive size, its crushing pressure, and its intense gravity. Yet, Saturn hides a bizarre, almost comical physical reality. It is the least dense planet in the solar system. In fact, its overall density is less than that of water. This leads to the famous scientific myth that if you had a bathtub large enough, Saturn would float. While this is technically true, the image it creates is absurd and hides the true terror. How can a planet so massive, so violently heavy at its core, be so incredibly light overall? The terror lies in the realization that you are looking at a giant bubble, a bloated, swollen sphere of gas stretching out to monstrous proportions. It is deceptive. It commands a massive area of space, yet it is composed of the lightest, most ethereal elements. It is a ghost ship of a planet, massive in volume, yet lacking solid substance. This contradiction messes with our intuitive understanding of mass and weight. It makes the planet feel unstable, like a cosmic balloon waiting to pop. Floating beside it, realizing that this gigantic, swirling wall of destruction is essentially lighter than a swimming pool, makes you realize how alien the physics of gas giants truly are. It is a trickster planet, hiding immense power behind a facade of low density. The true terror of Saturn is deeply psychological. It is the terror of the sublime. The philosopher Edmund Burke defined the sublime as something so vast, so powerful, and so obscure that it overwhelms our sense of self, creating a feeling of awe mixed with profound terror. Saturn is the ultimate embodiment of the sublime. It is so big that our brains fail to map it. It is so hostile that our bodies couldn't survive a second near it. It is so chaotic that our minds cannot predict it. When you truly sit and meditate on the reality of Saturn, a giant, swirling ball of toxic gas, raining liquid helium, hiding an ocean of liquid metal, wrapped in a blizzard of mountain-sized ice chunks, and screaming with supersonic winds in absolute darkness, it induces a unique kind of vertigo. You are standing on the edge of a conceptual abyss. The terror comes from realizing how fragile we are, how safe and perfectly tailored our little Earth is, and how violently insisting the rest of the universe is to our existence. Saturn does not care about us. It is a blind, deaf, and dumb giant, performing a violent, eternal dance in the dark. Yet, in this overwhelming terror, there is a path to profound peace. When you finally accept the absolute power and hostility of Saturn, the fear transforms. It turns into awe. You realize that you do not need to fight it. You do not need to conquer it. You simply need to observe it. Let the sheer scale of the planet wash over you. The supersonic winds, the crushing depths, the deadly rings, they are all doing exactly what the laws of physics dictate. There is a strange, hypnotic harmony in that chaos. By visualizing this giant, by letting your mind sink into its heavy, dark atmosphere, you can let go of the trivial, stressful details of your daily life. What does a bad day at work mean in the face of a 5,000-mile-wide hurricane? What does earthly anxiety mean next to an ocean of metallic hydrogen? Saturn is a cosmic eraser. It wipes away the smallness of human worry and replaces it with the vast, heavy, soothing silence of the infinite. It is a terrifying monster, yes, but it is our monster, a majestic, roaring guardian of the outer dark. So, let the image of the golden giant fill your mind. Let the silent, violent rings spin you into a state of deep, cosmic relaxation. The terror is real, but so is the beauty. We have reached the end of our journey into the dark heart of the ringed giant. We have descended through the illusions of beauty, past the shattered ice of the rings, and into the crushing, supersonic darkness of the deep atmosphere. We have seen the storms that could swallow Earth, and we have felt the heavy, isolating terror of a world with no surface. Saturn is a masterpiece of cosmic violence, a beautiful nightmares hanging in the freezing void. Yet, as we retreat back to the safety of our pale blue dot, we bring with us a new perspective. The very things that make Saturn so terrifying, its scale, its power, its indifference, are the exact things that make it so hypnotically beautiful. It reminds us of how lucky we are to have solid ground beneath our feet and a quiet sky above our heads. Thank you for joining me on this immersive voyage into the terrifying majesty of space. If this journey helped you escape the noise of the world, or if it sparked a new sense of awe within you, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments, if you were given an indestructible spaceship, would you dare to dive into the rings of Saturn?